Evening, everyone. On behalf of the members of the Sparta Planning Board and our professionals, I'd like to welcome you to tonight's meeting of the Sparta Township Planning Board. This meeting is being held on May 7th, 2025 at the Sparta Township Municipal Building located at 65 Main Street, Sparta. Proceedings of the meetings are being live streamed on YouTube at www.youtube.com/SpartaTWP. The time is now 7:02. And the meeting is called to order. Please note that no new business will be conducted after 9:30 p.m., and the meeting will end at 10 p.m. Please stand and join the board to salute our nation's flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Right, Yisha, would you do a roll call, please?
Sure. Jeanette Burke. Ernie Ragsdale.
Here.
Brian Zimmerman.
Here.
Ron Day.
Here.
Chairwoman Joan Furman.
Here.
Councilman Mark Scott.
Here.
Robert Bleakley.
Here.
Vice Chairman Robert Otto.
Here.
Celeste Luciano. And Christine Dunbar.
Here. Okay, thank you. The first thing we have on the agenda is the approval of the minutes. We have 3 minutes to approve. The first is from January 15th. Would somebody like to make a motion to approve the minutes?
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes of January 15th, 2025.
Thank you. A second, please?
I'll second the motion.
All right, any discussion? All right, well, I actually have a few things, not many, but at the bottom of the first page, when it speaks to approving the dates for 2025 for the meetings, it refers to January 7th reorganization meeting. I would just like to put 2026 in there to clarify that it's January 7th, 2026.
What?
At the end of the first page, says the meetings are held on the first and third Wednesday of each month at 7 o'clock. The planning board will have a January 7th reorganization meeting, only if the town council, blah, blah, blah. So I just wanted to put in 2026 there because the rest says that it's 2025 dates.
With the next page too, one where it just says January 21st.
Yes. Okay, and then on page 2, right after it references January 21st and our motion, there is another sentence in there. It's a straggler. It says a motion was made by Celeste Luciano to designate the official, and that was really referring to page 1 when there was a motion to approve the official newspaper. So it's a straggler sentence that should be struck out. It's already referenced on page 1. Okay, and then the last thing I have is on page 3. It says that I suggested a 5-minute break, and then I stated there would be a 30-day termination clause. Just reverse those two sentences because the 30-day termination clause came before our break. Minor changes, so if we could approve with those changes.
I motion to amend the motion to approve with those changes.
Second that.
Okay, roll call, please.
Robert Bleakley.
Yes.
Jeanette Burke. Ron Day.
Yes.
Celeste Luciano. Ernie Ragsdale.
Yes.
Councilman Mark Scott.
Yes.
Brian Zimmerman.
Yes.
Christine Dunbar.
Yes.
Vice Chairman Robert Otto.
Yes.
Chairwoman Joan Furman.
Yes. All right, the next are the minutes for April 2nd, 2025. Is there a motion to approve these minutes?
Did we get those? Did we receive those?
Is that the one that's missing?
Yeah.
I'm sorry, I got it mixed up. December 18th, right. You're right. The April 2nd one was not ready. So it's December 18th. Your motion to approve December 18th.
A motion to approve the December 18th, 2024 minutes.
I'll second.
Okay, thank you. I think the correction I had in that one was just a misspelling of Jenny Derrick's name. I don't remember what page it is, but I did note that there was a misspelling, and that was it. So if we could approve it based on that change.
Motion to amend the approval with the correction of Jenny Derrick's name spelled correctly.
Okay,
I'll second.
thank you. And a roll call on that, please?
Robert Bleakley.
I wasn't here, so I shouldn't be voting.
Oh, no, that's right. Ron Day,
Yes.
Ernie Ragsdale,
Yes.
Councilman Mark Scott.
He
Oh,
wasn't
I'm
here
sorry, he
either.
wasn't here. Brian Zimmerman,
Yes.
Christine Dunbar,
Yes.
Chairwoman Joan Furman.
Yes. Okay, thank you. Motion passes. All right, we're on to the public hearings, and I am going to switch up the order here because there is a representative from Ramez and Company who would like to address us.
Yes, thanks, Madam Chair. Michael Salvaggi on behalf of the applicant. I just wanted to let you know, late this afternoon, the applicant has decided to withdraw the application. The restaurant tenant, which is really the one driving it because of the increased parking that comes with a restaurant, is no longer interested in the space. So we're going to, try to find two retail tenants that would be consistent with what the approval was from this board in 2013. So that obviates the need for the continued public hearing. So I would normally just send a letter in, but it was so late in the afternoon, I didn't want to leave you guys hanging and wonder what was going on. So we felt that it was a courtesy to come here and let you know. I will follow up with a letter formally withdrawing it tomorrow, but in the meantime, if you guys were wondering what happened to us. So that's what we will do.
Okay, do appreciate you coming out for that. I do want to state, since you're putting this on the record, I also want to put some things on the record that have come to light during this investigation. And that is the fact that there is a business downstairs and that parking was never accounted for. So that when you do come back, we ask that you do keep that in mind. There's a letter from Madison Hooker of Schenck Price, which states that there is a complete delivery service down there. And so none of that gross leasable space was included in the parking. I did go in and speak to the person in charge. They told me there were 8 employees at any given time. I had counted 7 that day in the pharmacy. And they said during a shift change, the max is 10. But when you go out and count the cars in the back, that day there were 19. The week before there were 21. So there's definitely a business down there. So we just can't ignore that even as you're going forward because that did come to light. And
We, as I had given the board the benefit of the correspondence exchange, the pharmacy feels differently. And as I said to the chair before the meeting, I don't necessarily disagree. However, I think if there's an enforcement issue, it would probably be wise for the township to perhaps think about letting the zoning officer know and that person take the appropriate action because we've gotten nowhere from it. They believe that the storage of the inventory downstairs is just part of the business and they can continue with that. But when you read the 2013 resolution, it seemed to think it was storage. I mean, nobody had delivery services back then. So I think the idea was you're going to store it, and that won't necessarily give rise to more employees needed. And I think that's why the board did it in 2013. So, whatever becomes of that, that's up to the township. But we understand it, and so far we've gotten nowhere with that.
yeah, we're just putting it on the record and we're going to follow up on that. And I'd just like to open it up to the other board members if they have anything to say.
I appreciate your comments. We certainly do need a zoning officer.
Oh, you don't have one?
We have one, but we need more.
Oh,
I appreciate you coming in here and
Yeah.
advising us. Thank you very much.
no problem.
No, we do appreciate it.
And we wish you luck with finding the tenants that you're looking for. It's great, it's a great building.
So right now, just to clarify, there are no other tenants. It's just the pharmacy.
There's no other tenants. There was, the yoga studio? Yeah, come on,
Could Could you
My name
swear
is,
him in?
my name is Kamil Yassin.
1 minute.
Do you solemnly swear or affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth under penalty of law?
Yes, I do.
And state your name.
Kamil Yassin. There is a possible application. I was away in California for the past 3 months, and there's a possibility of another tenant that is going to occupy the space. I told them that they have to deal with the town directly. As far as I know, that's
Okay,
that's
so
what's
nothing
happening.
yet. Because there's been a lot on social media, people complaining about some tenant losing a lot of money as a result of the planning board not taking action. And yet, you know, we've given you every opportunity, and I specifically asked at the last meeting if there was another tenant, and the answer was no. And then a couple days later, all of this blew up on social media.
Again,
So
I
I
was.
just, for the record, I'm putting it out there, there's no tenant.
Yes, and again, I was in California for the past maybe 3.5 months, but I'm back and I will make sure that everything is in order and according to the township, ordinance and whatever they want.
Okay, thank you very
Okay.
much, appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
luck.
We appreciate it. Take care.
Good luck.
I also just, I failed to mention, our regular attorney, Ken Poro, is not here. A representative from Brock Eichler is here, one of his associates, Lindsay Cambron, so we welcome her. Thank you. All right, next we'd like to welcome Sussex County Technical School for their capital improvement plan about a wastewater treatment plant.
Hello, everyone.
Hi.
Is it okay? if we
Come
start
on up.
inside? Okay, I have 2 boards and possibly another 2. Can I
Yeah,
set
bring them
the
up, take your
easels here?
time.
No, last time you guys wanted us to angle the boards so that the camera could see it. Is that something we need to do?
Yeah, you could do it over there so everyone could see. We've moved our planner so she can actually see.
Okay.
And I just ask, as you speak, if, once you introduce yourself, if you could please use the microphones for the people that are listening to this.
Okay. You want to turn this in here? That way it'll be easier to communicate. And it's okay if we stand up and just share the microphone.
Whatever you're comfortable with.
Okay, we'll get started, okay? First of all, I just want to say thank you for taking the time to let us present before the planning board. We've been preparing for this project for almost 2 years. And then once I get into the history, you'll see that the project has been ongoing for a long time. And then we finally got the good set of team members, including the client. And we're hoping we can keep moving forward with the replacement of the wastewater treatment. So my name is Lionel Camacho. I'm a licensed architect recognized by the state of New Jersey for the past 5 years. And then I'll just pass along and introduce my peers.
Good evening, Board. So legal name is Giovanni Manilio from Mantera Design. We're the civil lead on the project. I'm a licensed professional engineer in the state of New Jersey, been licensed for the past 16 years. I believe I testified in front of this board and the zoning board recently.
Good evening, everyone. Steve Donati, excuse me, Steve Donati, CP Engineers. We are the wastewater consultant on the project. I've been a licensed engineer for more than I can count, 25, 30 years now.
I'd just like to ask our attorney if,
Swear you all in.
yes.
So we'll do it. We can do it at the same time. Do you solemnly swear or affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth under penalty of law?
I do.
Can we accept their credentials?
Yeah.
I will also take a minute just to introduce the client, the Sussex County Technical School Board of Education. They're in the forum today. We have Jenny, and we also have the head of building and grounds with us, Rod Mosner. Okay, so in terms of the process, I just want to go a little bit into the overview. So I was talking about the project having a long history. So the wastewater treatment plant that's actually on site it's original to the building, so it hasn't been really upgraded in the past, let's say 60 plus years. I know that from the past 20 years, an effort was put out there to try to look into the options to see what the next step is to keep him running for the future. So there were multiple reports in the past seeing if we can remediate it, do we have to replace? And then following those reports, the best recommendation is just to replace it. Due to money being an issue, like all of the projects, we are going to look into doing this in possibly 2 phases. The first phase would be what you see on the boards, which is the actual pump room that houses a lot of the mechanical blowers for the actual wastewater treatment. And then adjacent to it are these 2 field tanks right in front of it that actually process a lot of the sewage and release into the leach fields. The second major phase will come at a separate time. We'll do a different planning board presentation for that. And that would consist of the leach fields that are beyond on the far north, so towards that region. Yep. In terms of facing timeline, so one of the biggest challenge right now is also lead items. The wastewater treatment plant is very specific, and it also looks into plus or minus 28 to 30 weeks just to get the materials on site. Outside of that, we also have to go through the DEP process. So realistically, one of the questions that was mentioned was, when will the project start? We're looking at spring 2026, at least to start the excavation, and it will run into 2026 summer. And then because the school uses the facility throughout the school and into the summer, we'll have the existing treatment plant active while we build the new one. And then we'll do the switch over in fall 2026. The earliest we'll probably go out to bid is in this coming November, and that's after we receive our approvals from DEP, and also we're working through the funding sources. In terms of the funding sources, we were very proactive to making sure that not just the Sparta, but also the state of New Jersey helps help pay with the costs. So we submitted to the Department of Education, and we did ask for debt service aid from the state of New Jersey. And we did receive confirmation for that on the 25th of April, so where they will cover 40% of the cost. We're looking at a $4 to $5 million project for the first phase, for the entire phase, phase 1 and phase 2. So, but the bulk of it will be through phase 1, and the state of New Jersey will be assisting the county in covering 40% of the cost. In terms of architecture, we also were very conscious of the budget, so we're not trying to make the most. We're not trying to burn the fee. So if you look at the construction, it does increase in footprint from the existing pump that we're replacing, but that's because we're trying to future-proof the pump house. So right now we're looking at a 25 by 25 footprint, but we have this accommodating for future space, for future tie-ins, so we can keep upgrading the new system. In example, we have the chemical feed station that we won't be able to do as part of phase 1, but we are allocating the space for it so that in the future, when more funding becomes available, we don't have to tear down the pump room again. In terms of construction, we're going with very simple construction. We're going with split CMU, try to keep the material palette to a minimum, but also trying to blend into the adjacent buildings. Okay. I do want to point out that also, since we are in the site, there's a good chance that we are trying our best to keep these 2 trees. But I know logistically, sometimes having trees near the plant might not be the best scenario because of the deciduous leaves and all that stuff. So we are very conscious of the trees and trying to keep them. But once we get into construction, they might not align too perfect with where the plan is. Okay, maybe at this moment, I'll open it up to the board if you guys have any questions, and then maybe we can go to the town attorney to see, or the town engineer to see if there's any questions.
Thank you. I'd actually like to start with the town engineer.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just referring for the record to the report we prepared dated May 2nd, 2025. I understand this is the project for the school. I just brought up a few items that I thought would be of interest to the board and possibly any public, and if you could address them as I go over them. Looking on page 2 of the report, you did indicate what the time frame was as far as the construction of the facility. With regards to any lighting, I did see on the architectural plans a safety light over the entrance door. Were there any other lights to illuminate the area for work at night if there was some repair required, or that was the only light?
At this moment, that is the only light, but we can add more for emergency repairs. As far as being operational, we do want to put it on a on and off switch, and we do want to keep it off for most of the time. It would only be when the operator goes into the facility and he needs it. And also, let's say in a case of emergency, something needs to happen at night, you can turn that light on.
Sure, that's fine. I just wanted the board to know, because I know lighting issues are a concern of the board, and less is more.
Yes, and in this case, we just want to make it manually operated so that it gets operated less.
No problem. I do point out that Sparta does have a stormwater ordinance as far as anything greater impervious coverage over 500 square feet, but based on my rough scaling, I believe with removal of some of the other structures that are in that general compound area, you're less than the 500 square feet, so stormwater isn't an issue that way.
Yep, that is correct. There is a slight increase in impervious for this phase of the project, but since I've been involved for the past 3 years on this third phase, I think the actual impervious decreased by about 10,000 square feet with the dome removal and the additions to the building. So overall for the project, there's a significant decrease.
Then with regards to utilities and the architectural plans, two things. I know the existing facility already has power out there to run the existing plant. Is that existing power supplying the existing and also the proposed building? Is that supplemented with emergency power from the school's overall generator?
Yes, that is. And then again, to save cost and keep the cost to a minimum, we did do an exercise with an MEP engineer to make sure that the capacity is there. So again, we didn't want to just put in a new generator when we have what we need on site.
Okay, so no emergency generator. And the other thing on the architectural plans, it does show in the sections, and I think on the exhibit you've got on the left as I'm looking at it, there's a ventilation system coming through the roof. Is that running 24/7, or is that just on an as-needed basis?
It would be as needed basis, and same thing going back to the budget constraints. We didn't want to just add a condenser and AC. In this case, what happens with the operation is there's one individual that goes in there, not on a daily basis, but then it would be just to accommodate him if he's there during the summer and he just needs an exhaust fan or passive cooling for some reason.
Okay. And while we're on fan in the building, can you provide any comments or testimony regarding any noise or odor emission from the plant?
So no noise. Sorry.
Just that noise.
Is that me? Oh. Yeah, that's fine. The blowers, the only noise-making apparatus are the blowers, which are inside the building. And they're also very low noise blowers to start with. So you can actually be in the building and speak while the blowers are running, and so it's very low noise. Odor, there should be no odors. That if the plant run correctly, there are no odor issues, as long as the aeration is working and everything else. So.
All right. And as far as, I did notice the one area, and the architect just mentioned it, on the architectural floor plan, there's a label for future chemical feed area. In the future, what kind of chemicals are you talking about? And just maybe elaborate
Yeah,
on
and
that.
just to clarify what Lionel said, that is future for future treatment in some respect. DEP has a way of always increasing discharge limits or adding discharge limits. So we're not sure what's happening. There's no plan for chemicals at the moment. But if a future limit required, we might add a chemical. And it's normally something like a coagulant chemical, like a ferric chloride, which is just a salt. So it's a very innocuous chemical, just to help the flock condense and be able to be filtered out.
So it's a future space if and when needed.
Yes, it might end up being a treatment unit and/or chemicals, but yeah, there's no plan for any chemicals or anything like that coming up.
Okay. And then under miscellaneous, I just listed what I thought were the additional approvals that you'd have to get as part of the package. And what we always recommend is, if the board approves the application, that ultimately, if it's constructed, just provide an as-built plan. And that's my report, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Lindsay, do you have anything?
No, no comments for planning purposes.
Thank you. Our attorney, anything?
No.
Members of the board? Ron?
Yeah, if you could, so I guess first of all, are these two drawings, were they provided to us before, or is this the first time we're seeing them tonight? I didn't see them in the package.
No, this the first time you're seeing it.
Okay, so we should probably add those as exhibits.
I can send Dory the digital copies.
Could you send an electronic copy, and that way they could post it to the file?
Yep, that's fine.
Risha, you okay with that?
I'm sorry, what?
They'll send you electronic copies of this, and that way you could add these two exhibits to the file?
Yes, and also, we, have a electronic file on the Google Drive.
Yes, yeah, and so
Yes.
you can post it there.
Yes, it's all in there already.
Perfect.
Well, not this, these are new.
These are new.
Oh, these, no, those,
Yeah.
okay, no. The other ones, whatever they sent, we have in a Google Drive.
Yep. And then to clarify, what you guys saw in terms of the review set is identical to the design. The only new images would be kind of like the perspective, three-dimensional views.
To Ron's point then, should we be marking these like exhibit something 1, something 2?
A1 and A2?
That's fine. Yeah, this is the first time they're coming with these?
Yes.
Okay, yeah, that would be good. A1 and A2.
And then another question I had, so you mentioned these materials are different than the other buildings. Can you elaborate a little bit on that?
We're trying to limit the material palette, so meaning we don't want to do any metal paneling if we don't have to. We are mimicking the existing construction throughout the school campus. So if you start walking around the main campuses, you start to see that a lot of the utilitarian spaces tend to have a split face CMU blocking. And then towards the school area, classroom areas, they have long, narrow brick. And then the more offices that are standalone, in this case, the DOE building, which is right here, has more of a residential look. So the design for the pump room actually mimics the vinyl siding on the gable end with the shingle construction, but the actual blocking is a reference to the utilitarian spaces throughout the school.
Right, thank you. I guess my last question was, I'm not sure that the police department, fire department commented on this. I don't know if they have to or not. Is there an access road for them to?
We
I missed that then.
if I could, they did, at least the police department had no additional comments. And as they saw that it doesn't impede any of the traffic area.
How about the fire department? Should they be commenting on this? I don't believe, so could we add maybe something that says that subject to the review or?
I believe in my report on the end, I included Sparta Township construction official, and I believe his fire subcode official will look at the building
Great,
as
thank you.
well.
Thank you.
And I would just say that when I did go out to the site to inspect it, basically, there was no direct drive right now to the existing plant. You had to walk across the grass, bless you. But the parking lot is where you basically park, and it's not that far from the parking lot pavement.
Okay, thank you. That's it, thank you.
I think you also asked in there whether it needed to be wider to accommodate. Was that, am I getting something mixed up? But if the access road had to be wider to accommodate a fire truck, was that in your report?
I don't believe so. I don't,
I read it somewhere.
yeah. What I would anticipate, God forbid, if there was a fire in the plant, my assumption is, and is subject to the fire department reviewing it, that they'd probably park their emergency equipment in the parking lot because they wouldn't want to get too close to the plant if it was, God forbid, on fire, and fight it that way. It's literally not that far.
Thank you. Anything else?
Thank you.
Mark?
I stopped up there the other day. It's a very impressive facility. I was wondering, how many students attend this at the peak?
If I would say it's plus or minus 600, but I would have to double check with Jenny. 735. I mean, we do know that it processes almost 18,000 gallons, so which is typical.
That's it, I'm sorry.
Rob?
I'm all set, thank you. I was just curious, you're doing this with future proofing in mind. Are you filtering out PFAS with what you're putting in? Is that on your radar or no? Okay. And then for the trees that may succumb to the construction or maybe, not located how you'd want, would you consider replacing with any kind of vegetation?
I know we are obviously regrading and then backfilling with clean and then restoring the lawn areas of the former tanks. But as far as the trees, I mean, at this point, the goal is to keep them, but we won't know exactly once we get into construction. Sometimes when we start digging, things shift a foot here, 2 feet there. And I know that they're pretty close, and I know for sure the leaves are going to be a maintenance issue.
Is there, I'm just thinking about shielding and erosion control, stuff like that. So, because I know you're going with that industrial look, the split CMU. The only other thing with that, so lighting was brought up. Have you considered lighting temperature? Have you determined what you're using? In the drawing, it looked like you might be using wall pack lights.
We don't have a preference. If there's something the town would like to see, if it's ever used at night, if it's a warmer tone temperature, then I think that's more appropriate than the cool, higher degree light.
Okay, yeah, I'd like to see like maybe closer to 3,000 Kelvin is kind of what we're asking for.
No, I think it makes I
think it'll look better. And then, if as drawn as wall pack lights, I mean, I don't know if Dave wants to weigh in here. I think I heard that they kind of discourage that. However, I do recognize with the cracked CMU that you're looking for more of a utilitarian look. So maybe in this case, they're more appropriate.
My understanding of the lighting as testified to was it's just basically on an if and when needed basis. But if, in addition to the 3,000 Kelvin for the less bright light, if they could have a downward facing fixture versus a wall pack.
Okay, understood.
Yeah, it was just, I quickly went through the drawing and I saw in the legend a little icon, a little symbol of a light, and it looked like a wall pack light. And if we could do like 90 degrees to the building, warmer light is kind of what we're going for.
Sounds good.
Hi, thank you. So I just need a little education. So you said that the current treatment plant is 60 years old?
Close to that. I don't know the exact age, but it's close to 60 plus years.
And the system that's there, is that a septic field, which is similar to what you will be installing?
Steve.
Yeah, the new treatment system will be almost identical to the existing one. It's called an activated sludge treatment plant. So there's a treatment system before it gets discharged to the ground. The new system is very similar. It's the most common type of treatment plant for this application.
Okay, so will this handle a greater capacity in the future? This particular treatment plant, you have, what, 750 students there now? Or is it going to be, is it modeled
It's
to handle the same?
Yeah, it's being designed for the same capacity, and it winds up school plants, just the way DEP looks at them, are always over-designed. So this plant has a design capacity of 18,000 gallons a day, only sees about 4,000 gallons a day. So there is capacity available if the school is to expand, but if it stays at the same size, it'll still be at that 4,000. And the plant is the same size. It's per DEP.
Okay, so again, education here. So this improvement will be better at removing what specific pollutants? I was a little disappointed to hear that PFAS wouldn't be addressed, but that's probably very special.
Yeah,
But so what's it going to do a better job of, this new system?
It's going to it removes ammonia, BOD, TSS, ammonia, all the regular requirements. Right now, PFAS, we're not disregarding that. It's not a requirement on the wastewater side. It's only a requirement on the water side. At some point, it may become a requirement on the wastewater side. This is a discharge to groundwater, so PFAS would first hit discharge to surface water plants where they discharge this to a river that could be a water source. And that's why we have future plans. But the plan is designed to meet all current and expected future discharge requirements. We don't want the school to pay for removing more than is required by DEP under current and expected future permits.
So does it do a better job of removing those
It will, yes.
pollutants than the 60-year-old?
Absolutely, yes.
Treatment plant.
Yeah. Oh,
By-
it's a higher level of treatment, and it's also, by virtue of the fact it's new and the other plant is sort of limping along now, this is going to be a much better overall treatment.
That's great. Do you have any type of percentage of what would be the percentage improvement for in general, for the removal of the pollutants?
I can't say, but this plant will remove, like, for instance, for BOD removal, it will remove 98% of BOD, 98% of TSS. It'll get ammonias down to 2 or 3 milligrams per liter, so to a very low level of pollutants once it's done. I don't know enough about the existing plant to say a percentage, but we could do that calculation, obviously.
Yeah, that would be
Yeah,
interesting.
we'd have to look
know.
at what it's
I mean,
discharging.
because that's what
Yeah.
we're paying for, right? We want to see happen. That's why
Exactly.
we're having the new plant.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, yeah.
Thank
The other thing about this is we always remember when you're discharging to groundwater, it's like your septic system, if you have one at home, you're getting a lot of treatment in the ground. So we measure what comes out of the treatment plant, but then when it gets into the groundwater recharge fields, it gets an additional level of treatment. So by the time it reaches the groundwater table, it's really clean.
So
It's
the
drinking
ground-
water clean.
You would be improving the groundwater.
Exactly. That's what's happening here. Right. Exactly right.
Thank you.
Anytime. I love talking about wastewater.
Okay, Mr. Scott has another question.
How many more students could you handle here with this system? Yeah, with the system, I mean, that's a,
You could quadruple the size.
Yeah.
Like you're talking about, still. Greatly increase.
Because they're only using a quarter.
Yeah, exactly. So 18 gallons of, 18,000 gallons can be treated, and they're only using 4,000. So quadruple is a good estimate.
I just had one. Does the school offer summer programs?
Yes, it's technically a technical school. So I know that a lot of the surrounding schools do have ASY, but I don't know exactly what programs they would offer in the summer.
No, that's okay. I'm asking because on the drawings that were submitted, it showed a building right next to it. I don't know what that building was, but what kind of safety considerations do you have if you're doing this over the summer with students nearby, with cranes and other things? Have you addressed the safety factors?
Typically, we have a staging plan. It wasn't included in the set that you guys were reviewing, but the staging plan, for instance, if we're going to start excavation in spring 2026, that's during the school hours, but it's off-site from the actual main building. So temporary precautions such as temporary fencing are getting built in, the temporary egress as needed, and then also just visibility to making sure that it doesn't attract attention. So during our phasing, we will consider precautions to limit disturbance to school activities. In reference to the adjacent building, that is the Department of Education superintendent building. So it's typically just a main office, so probably no more than 5 individuals would be occupying it, and it would be sporadic, or in our case, it would probably not be used as often during summer. But there is a phasing plan that accounts the construction during school hours into the summer and also into the fall, and allowing the school to reopen.
Thank you. In addition to the fencing, would you have security personnel out there?
We can make that request, but I think as far as the contractor, I know we do call for a safety management plan to be submitted. So in terms of the construction, we do monitor what the contractors do.
Thank you. Does anybody have anything else? Do you have anything else?
No, thank you.
So I guess at this point, I'm still just a little unclear. We don't approve it, but I guess we endorse it. So we should take a vote to endorse it with some of the conditions that were stated. And I have fire department approval, 3,000 K lighting, downward facing lighting fixture, and safety management plan. Anything else?
And everything else that might have been in Dave's?
Yes, of
documents?
course, yes. I don't, would you like to craft a resolution based on that? I mean, a vote, or does that kind of suffice?
I think we should take a vote with the, the approval or the.
So the wording was
recommendation
okay with
it.
that?
Yeah, yeah, oh,
Okay.
yes, yeah.
Okay,
with
that's what I
the-
wanted to make
With the
sure.
recommendation. Mhm.
Okay, so would somebody vote to endorse or approve this?
I'll make a motion that we endorse it.
Thank you. Second?
I'll second that.
All right, roll call, please.
Robert Bleakley,
Yes.
Ron Day,
Yes?
Ernie Ragstat,
Yes.
Councilman Mark Scott,
Yes.
Brian Zimmerman,
Yes.
Christine Dunbar,
Yes.
Vice Chairman Robert Otto,
Yes.
Chairwoman Joan Furman.
Yes. All right, we wish you
Thank you,
lots of
everyone.
luck with the
Happy digging.
project.
Yep, thank you.
Thanks for coming by. Was that just a joke?
It was funny.
Do you guys want to keep the physical boards, or do you just want the digital copy?
I think the electronic copies.
Okay, thank you again. Have a good night, everyone.
You too, thank you.
Mayor.
One second to find my papers here. All right, we're moving on to other board business. I do have some things, but I'd like to ask the board members if they have anything that they'd like to raise. All right. give
Joan,
you-
are you going to talk about,
Yeah, we'll get to that.
okay, I'll hold off then.
Okay. The first thing I just wanted to mention is that we have had some affordable housing plan meetings, and the deadline for submitting the plan is June 30th. And the Planning Board will be voting to adopt the plan at our June 18th meeting. And that's when we'll have our open session on it. In order to prepare us for that, though, I wanted to have some executive sessions with, so you can, get some background as to what is going on with all of this, because, the adoption is a big thing, and you need to be updated on it. So I've asked for 2 executive sessions. The first one will be May 21st. And that'll just be more of a general overview on things, where they stand, where our numbers stand. And then another one on June 4th, and that'll be the meat and potatoes part of it, where the plan is almost fully developed and we'll have a chance to really review the draft. So when it gets time to be the 18th, we should be in a good position to approve it. The meetings are going to take place at 6:15, before the planning board, just because it makes it easier for some of the other professionals to get here and to present to us. So I just wanted to make everybody aware of that, if you can try to plan your schedules around that. Okay? And then the town council, we adopt it, and then the town council endorses it. So if we adopt it on the 18th, it'll go to town council for endorsement on June 24th. And, but actually, it has to be submitted within 48 hours of our adoption.
That's the deadline?
48 hours after we adopt it on the 18th. So if we're doing that on a Wednesday, it'll be in that Friday, but then it'll go to town council the following Tuesday for an endorsement.
This is
And it
all
just-
part of the DCA round 4?
Yes, yes. And then
It'll get submitted to Fair Share within 48 hours, and then it gets submitted to, it's called the program, but it's the court after it's adopted by mayor and council.
So that's it. So next meeting, we'll have the overview.
Who are the members of that committee?
Well, Steve Warner is the attorney,
Sure.
and Catherine Sarmad is the planner for it.
Mhm,
The other members on the committee are our Mayor Neil Clark,
mhm.
Dean Blumetti is on it, Jim Zepp, and then just in the last couple of calls, I've been on it, as well as Camporo. Hope I didn't miss anybody. I did, and a nod.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay. Any questions on it? All right.
Well, yeah, I do
Yeah,
have
go
a,
ahead.
I do have a question. Because I'm not up to speed on what this is. And I understand that, that our number is 311 units. And, I've seen I've been in this housing business for a long time, and I've seen that there are multiple ways that a town can attack these phases of these DCA phases. And, there are ways in which we can either do it the easy way or the hard way. The easy way is, okay, let the developer come in, give him 80% market units, and we put in 20% COA. And the total number of units, instead of 311, it's more like 1,555 units would be built in Sparta. So that's one way we could do it. And that means, you have 1,200 more units. You have hundreds of more children. Costs $324,000 in Sparta to educate one child for 13 years. And so doing it the easy way doesn't, it looks good on paper, and I wasn't prepared for this, and I can do all the math and show you how this works. But doing it the easy way means that you're just growing your population. Your population grows by 1,555 units times 2 or 3 residents per unit. And so suddenly then your population goes 3,000, 4,500 more people, and suddenly you're building 80 million, 100 million, $200 million schools, in addition to paying $24,000 to educate the children. So what's the hard way? The hard way is that Sparta actually goes out and obtains low-income housing tax credits, which are available from the state. And then we enter into the Aspire program, which can bring us up, that low-income housing tax credit can provide the bottom 20% of the capital stack. And then using the Aspire program, we can go up to 70% of the capital stack. And then there would be other grants and items that are available at that time, that are always available. And then, there would be capital that Sparta would have to put into it. And what is the result of this? The result of this is that you have less housing, you bring less housing in. That's a pro, that's a good thing. And your population grows much slower because Trenton is forcing us to grow in this program. And one of the downsides is that you don't have an interspersing of low income with a market unit, with 2 market units, 3 or 4 market units, then a low income unit. And you have to really spread out that housing. And there are other ways that we can address this. We can bring in veterans housing, we can bring in senior housing, and there are limits to how much you can do on that, and I'm sure our planner can tell us about that, but I just think that, we don't necessarily have to consider the easy way.
Mark, can I jump in on that? I think and correct me if I'm wrong, the 55 and older communities count towards that as well?
So there's a couple things at play. So what most likely, I don't know what your planner is doing, but what she most likely is probably doing is preparing currently a vacant land analysis where you pull all of the tax assessors' classifications for anything that's been classified as 1, which is vacant, or 15C, which is public property. You then go parcel by parcel and you add different layers in GIS. These layers contain things like steep slopes, historic, habitats, FEMA flood maps, all different kind of environmental constraints, Rossi sites, parkland, open space, which I'm going to assume there's quite a bit here in Sparta. I personally have not looked at your map, so I can't speak specifically about what that looks like, but it's most likely that a lot of these properties are going to be pulled and have some kind of constraint. That's what I have found in most of the municipalities that I have done this in. From your vacant land analysis is where you pull out your realistic development potential. So your realistic development potential is then when you identify the sites that are vacant, you then look at a couple of factors. Also, the other factor when looking at these is, can it produce 5 dwelling units using the 6 dwelling units in acre calculation? So if it can't produce 5 or more dwelling units, it's a property that is too small and also cannot be used in this analysis. So then you pull out what is left. Once you pull out what is left, you then look at the zoning, the existing zoning in the round 2 rules, which is kind of the rules that we've been using for these vacant land analysis in the 2nd and 3rd round, and we've been told to use in the 4th round as well, is you look at the characteristics of the neighborhood as well. One of my municipalities, their only vacant parcel in their municipality was in an area that was, you needed 2 acres for 1 unit. And all of the properties surrounding that were also in that zone. So we use that as what the density would be, because it would not work with the character of the neighborhood. And based on the rules from the 2nd round, we have to go with what is present for that zoning, because you have zoning in place for a reason. So that is where we were then able to pull the realistic development potential using that zoning and the density that you have in place. So if a similar situation, if you had a property using your zoning and your density calculation that only produced 3 units or 4 units, I'll do, I'll say 10 just to make it an easy calculation in my head. 10 units, though, does not mean 10 affordable units. Fair share does not traditionally like 100% affordable projects. So using their methodology, you then do a 20% set aside of those 10 units. So of those 10 units, you set those aside. That's going to now be 2 units, right? And of those 2 units, this is where like the math comes in of the different types of units. 50% of those have to be family. 50% can be a 50 plus. It can be, we have like assisted living facilities, things like that, that can be used. But 50% have to be for families, 50% have to be for those other kind of housing assistance. So that's where you'll come up with what your realistic development potential would be, which I'm going to assume your planner will come. So that big number that you got from DCA most likely is going to be whittled down once you can look at, you know, your zoning, your available land, the environmental constraints. I would assume that you are probably going to come up with a number much lower than that.
Okay, thank you
No,
very
the
much.
311 is the lower number.
Okay, she's done the vacant land analysis.
We did get a letter from the judge today.
No, that number, that 311 is the judge coming up with. So in January, you adopted an ordinance, and that was based off of, this is like very convoluted, yes. So that January ordinance was saying that you did your methodology using DCA, because you were required to use DCA's methodology, right? Which was a 3-factor methodology that used census data, tax assessor's records, and the land capacity mapping. And you had to use their calculation. You couldn't bring any outside sources in. So your planner most likely looked at the land capacity map, which was the only one you could really argue and say, hey, you added some properties in here that are not developable. You removed some of those maybe, and you then filed in your resolution, this is how many units we think. And then you opened yourself up, right, for that, for any type of challenge from outside sources, right? So you probably either heard from Fair Share or the Builders Association saying they don't agree. You have your regional need. So what you heard from the judge was just their assessment of that first piece. So now from that 311, Catherine will most likely take that 311 and whittle it down using your vacant land analysis. So that court judgment was just based on what happened in January. Most likely, and why you guys are probably holding off until the end of June, right, is to get your best argument to the table and not to allow for any additional time for challenges to be made.
Well, this is why I thought we needed executive sessions. Because it is so complicated.
It's
And,
very
the first time I sat
complicated.
in on it, I was like, whoa, durational analysis. what
There's
is
a lot
this?
of numbers.
Very,
Yeah, well, Alpine School's coming with a
55.
proposal, you know, in the next couple
I know,
weeks
I know you bring up, the cost per student throughout school, but also the cost of
of the school.
the school level.
Yeah,
Correct,
And then
exactly.
it will
We need
be
to do-
impact
it's
middle
not
school, high
Band-Aid on our
school.
schools.
and
say, "Oh,
then,
let's stick some more trailers
and to
in."
go with the cost of a student, say now, then if it was a student with special needs, right, that almost like quadruples the cost of that as well. So there's definitely all things to consider when it comes to the additional housing. But I do want to reiterate that 50% of that affordable housing obligation is going to be for families, where the other 50% can be used towards other items. And there's different credits and things like that as well. And
I think we've met the senior, though. We're kind of maxed out on that.
so it's new round. So unless you're using credits from the previous round, you are? Okay. And then you have 10 years to build this as well. So that's another thing to consider. It's over a 10-year span. So that's where also the challenging piece is going to come in for your planner and for mayor and council, because you have to come up with some kind of plan in 30 days that's supposed to be the plan for 10 years. But I think you should also consider that a lot of these plans ended up being amended over the previous round as well. I had 2 different municipalities that we amended up until December of 2024, and they were still making changes because either projects didn't come to fruition, there was land swaps, things like that as well.
Yeah, we're doing that. I know that, you know, the land has been identified. It had to be, I guess, of a builder expressed interest, and those are the things that are going into the plan.
Yeah,
I did
or
bring up like the Chatham
Right.
analysis of where they took a building and they got a $5 million grant, and it's all run by Chatham. It's just all
COA,
COA.
DCA.
Yeah. So they said that, it doesn't preclude us from doing that in the future, but I think these are some discussions too that you have to have at the town council level.
Okay.
So we'll tack it on all ends.
yeah, and then also a lot of things too. I've seen certain projects too. You'll have different nonprofits like United Way will come and do a project. One of my municipalities, they have an old DPW site, and they're going to use funds from their fair share housing account because they've been having the account kind of accrue money, and you lose that money if you don't use it. So you can use 20% towards your professionals for affordable housing, and the rest should be going towards either, affirmative marketing for these units or, rehabilitation of units or any type of item that would help build units as well.
Thank you. That was a great explanation.
Thanks. Like when he was excited to talk about wastewater, I can talk about affordable housing until my face is blue at this point. So yeah, when he said that, I was like, I can relate to that. I also have a topic that most people don't want to talk about. So
You've got your audience now.
yeah, this is my time to shine.
Thank you.
Yeah.
My big question is, with the affordable housing, we're putting this plan out there saying, okay, we're gonna find where we can locate, 250 affordable units, but we can't make builders build it.
Exactly.
So
Especially if
we
there's
just
no
have to allocate it.
sewage and
It seems
we've
like
got the durational.
every past year we've had, we've never got to the number.
Yeah.
So I mean, it's,
Not
I
easy.
think the growth stays pretty steady, and some builders don't want to build affordable units into their project because they don't get as much money for it. So they'd rather just build.
Well, they'll have to.
Yeah, well, if that's the only land that's available, yeah.
No, because maybe, I'm not going to be the one to explain this, but the mandatory set-asides, so if we have
So
20% across the board,
If you have that zoning and in that zone, they want to build in that overlay where there's a set aside, they by ordinance have to do that.
do it, yeah,
Yeah, I think that's, Round Top is like that, right?
I guess.
Yeah.
Is like that. Green
Yeah.
Tree is not, I don't believe.
You're talking about development, but not like a single family.
Yeah.
Somebody building a single family house doesn't.
I understand what you're saying though, as well as you could put, I've seen this happen as well, where municipalities have put the zoning or the overlays in place and nothing ever was built. So
Yeah.
you can put the zoning, you can put all of the tools for it to happen, but
That's not to say it won't happen.
we don't know what will happen in 10 years. So we cannot predict the future, but that's the effort of the housing element, right? You'll have a set of ordinances in there as well that most likely will be how your plan, your game plan of affordable housing.
So when we have these executive sessions, will someone be here to explain and answer
yeah.
questions? Okay, that's,
I
And-
can't do it.
and maybe just think about, I know when I look at the open space plan, we had almost a full meeting dedicated to that. Make sure that whatever we allocate, there's enough time.
I'm starting to think we should push it back to 6 o'clock, give us at least an
Or,
hour.
or maybe we just leave that night free, and can we pick a night and say, this is what we're gonna hear that night? And so people don't have to get here at 5:30 and 6 o'clock. We start at, 6 o'clock or whatever, and we go till 10.
What about the public's part of it?
Well, that would be part of that meeting. So one meeting dedicated to, so we'll have
'Cause I
an
think
executive session,
Right.
the first one, and then we'll have a follow-on executive session, and then maybe that same night, we'll have a public session as well. Something to think about
The public session's going to be on the 18th.
on the 18th, so.
So we'll have 2 executive sessions and then a public session, and we have to endorse it at the end of that public session.
Okay,
So these 2 executive sessions are for us to really talk about it, and I'm
Okay.
thinking we need more than the 45 minutes.
yeah.
So if
I
we
think so
did,
too, Joan, but we could also we've also gone from executive session into public and then back in the executive too.
yeah, but
You have to.
they don't want to hang around.
Yeah.
So we're going to have Catherine coming, and Steve Warner's going to be
Okay.
on call or Zoom or whatever he can do.
Okay.
He said he could do it earlier, so 6 o'clock, he couldn't do the 7 o'clock.
All right.
So 6 o'clock, we could go till, maybe can we start our planning board meeting at 7:30?
I think if we notice it, that would enough.
We could do that if we notice it, right?
We have to, we
Yes.
definitely have to notice at least 48 hours in advance.
Okay, so that's a good possibility then. We could go 6 to 7:30. Okay, we'll do that.
I wonder if you could just say it tonight, right?
Sorry?
You could put it on the record tonight as well that it will be at 7. And then just advertise as well for the meetings?
At 6?
We'll know that the 7:30.
7:30,
Yeah.
yes, yes, yes. All right, so it's on the record, public record, that we're going to start May 21st at 7:30.
I got a question about this process, because I'm still, it's a lot. I was just looking at stuff, and I know you guys have all kind of hit on some of my concerns about the environmentally sensitive lands and steep slopes and all that stuff, and we're looking at that. But did we look at 15-12, ordinance 1512?
What is that?
So, an ordinance amending the land use ordinance of the Township of Sparta to update public notice and submission requirements and incorporate Highlands Council call-up provisions for applications for development in the Highlands Preservation Area. So we have, I think, when we were having that question, should we work with the Highlands Council on some of this stuff? That Sparta may have opted in for the preservation area, but not for the rest. So
For the planning, but not for the preservation.
yeah.
Your housing element will address your relation to the Highlands Council as well. There should be a whole section. I have like I'm doing Wanaques, and Wanaque will have a section related to Highlands, as well as I have also Meadowlands area as well. And so you should have a section in your housing element related to
To a preservation area?
it should, it should address that and how it relates to if there are any vacant lands there, how that would restrict it from being built in certain ways. Like I also have areas near like Teterboro Airport, so that restricts the height of how high you can build. So if there's a vacant land close to there, we took it out because you're heavily restricted on what you can do and what uses can be that close to an airport, for example.
Okay. And so I was just curious, like, does it bleed across to planning at all, since we have the preservation area coordination with the Highlands Council? But anyway, I'm just putting it out
Write
there.
it down, everybody write down.
15-12, I will send it, and
Yeah,
you
'cause
could bring it
It's
up.
going to be a really tight time frame, so we're going to have to
Yeah.
act quickly. So the better prepared we are to ask the questions and get some answers as she's writing it, better off we'll be. All right, anything else? Okay, moving along. I want to just talk about the minor site plan subcommittee a minute, not so much the report, but the fact that we've received a lot of unwarranted online flack. And it's kind of disturbing because people are commenting without really considering any of the facts. And it's surprising because a few of the people who should know better, because of their prior involvement with the town, are making these comments. And, every story has two sides. And so for the record, most towns do not have a minor site plan subcommittee, and everybody has to go right to the full planning board. And by our ordinance, we cannot grant waivers. Well, I don't know whether people are trying to circumvent the process or applicants just may not be aware, and it's a little of both. But we're getting a lot of applications that really don't belong with us, or they're coming in for things that would require a waiver with no backup, to prior resolution to prove that there was a variance. So we've had a lot of issues, and so it's been unfair. So I just wanted to address that. But, we also recognize there are things that we could be doing better. So we've tried to make a lot of changes in the last couple of months. We developed a brand-new application that addressed some of the concerns, particularly with multi-tenant sites and parking. And that form just started on Monday, May 5th. So we now are using that. That should help things. We also took, we know that the ordinances are somewhat difficult to read. They are all over the place. If you're looking to find a sign ordinance, well, you've got design standards, and then you have additional standards by, the zone you're in. And the other day I found one more. I thought I had them all, right? So there's another one. So I do feel for the applicants in that regard. But we did develop it so that when they come in with this new application, they're given a copy, which is, rewritten, retyped, everything for the design standards. And if you're in this zone, this is what you need. They're also given the parking standards. So we hope that that will improve the process a little bit. And then tonight, we are going to also introduce a resolution. That's what I'm getting to, because we did have a meeting to discuss some of these processes where these applications, if somebody filled out a minor site plan application, it just was given to the minor site plan subcommittee. Zoning never took a look at it. And so that wasted some time, because then we finally get it and we're looking at it and saying, well, no, we have questions, or this is blank, or no, it doesn't belong here, all of these other things. So you have a resolution in your packet right now, and it came out late, it came out today. So if you didn't have a chance to look at it, I'd like you to look at it now. It's very short, so it's easy to look at. I just have to find it myself. Oh, thank you. And I'll read it out loud because it's short. It's Resolution 25-15, Administrative Zoning Process. In the matter of Sparta Township Planning Board concerning Sparta Township land use applications. Whereas the Sparta Construction Department and its related land use group receive and process numerous land use applications daily, monthly, and annually. And whereas, to better effectuate the land use process for the Sparta public, the Planning Board and the Sparta Construction Department, the Planning Board and the Sparta Construction Department seek uniform and transparent land use application process. And whereas the Sparta Planning Board, in conjunction with the Sparta Planning Office, direct that all Sparta land use matters shall first be reviewed by the Sparta zoning officer for zoning compliance. Now therefore be it resolved by the Planning Board of the Township of Sparta, Sussex County, that number one, any and all Sparta Township land use applications must be reviewed by the Sparta Township zoning officer prior to any other land use submittal. And number two, a copy of this resolution shall be published in the New Jersey Herald as required by law within 10 days of its passage. So what it basically means is that the zoning office will be reviewing these applications to determine where they should go. Should they go to the full planning board? Should they go to the zoning department, zoning board of adjustment? Should they go to the minor site plan subcommittee, or could the zoning office just make that determination? So they'll be looking at it, they'll be looking to see that the blanks are filled in, that, everything is properly attached. And they're also going to be including something we found the other day, which is, what is it called, Rob? SDL? SDL.
The construction portal, spatial data logic.
Right.
So,
Go ahead, you can explain that part of
Well,
it. Rob
It should
found
be
it.
used by all, it could be used like your assessor, construction, land use, there's all different portals.
We never
that-
knew about it, though.
Oh.
So we're looking
good.
for
Well,
prior resolutions.
And you
the
can
things
load
that
all your
happened.
GIS mapping on
some of
there.
us, some of us knew about it, but some of us were only using it as, for residential construction purposes. But I believe it was, to give credit where credit's due, it was township manager assistant who located that from the internal system, there's a lot more detail. And so that's where we were able to chase down some prior approvals on signage, so that we didn't have to just simply guess and say, well, a sign's there, so it must have been approved, because we can't make that assumption. Unfortunately, signs oftentimes just have been put up. Not all signs, but so that's something that we have to look at. So that's just kind of another tool for us if an applicant, and again, I think the responsibility does fall on the applicant there's a section in there which says, please attach any prior approvals, variances, waivers related to your application. If you're applying as a tenant or on behalf of a tenant as an owner, you know, it's important. The more information we have, the more efficiently we can deal with these applications. And quite honestly, the last couple months have been hundreds of back and forth attempts to basically do the work for the applicant on behalf of the applicant. And it's been a lot of time on staff that I don't think, you know, is fair. I don't think, you know, it's a $50 application for minor site plan review. And that needs to, I mean, for residential construction, you have to include everything. It's on the property owner to provide that information so the determination can be made. In a lot of these instances, we've been able to do the legwork for them, but going forward, I think we're going to try to put things in that will help applicants find the information if they don't have it. But, you know, we can't, it's unsustainable to,
Torturous.
yeah. So, I mean, I think that was kind of to your point, was that there were comments being made about, you know, we're blocking things, but no, we're not, because the minor site plan subcommittee can't actually grant waivers or variances. We can just help handhold the process for the applicant beyond what the office might be able to do. And when we determine that the threshold is reached where we can't act on it, then we'll just pass it along to the full planning board or the zoning board of adjustment. But to the chair's earlier point, most towns don't, you know, offer this alternate pathway, which quite honestly, for $50, it saves the applicant a lot of time and money, because they don't have to typically hire professionals to represent them. They don't have to wait for an opening in, you know, the board's availability. They don't have to public notice. They just have to submit the application. So again, I think made this request in a different way before, but, you know, I'd put it at the applicants. The more information you can provide, the better. And same thing for the Chamber of Commerce. It's frustrating to hear that, you know, Sparta is not business friendly. That's not true. Sparta has a master plan. It's updating its master plan. It has zones. And I think our planner said something like, we have zoning for a reason. We have a plan for a reason. And I think that reason is pretty obvious. If, you know, even from a Chamber of Commerce perspective, if people were just allowed to put up whatever they wanted, it would be great for a couple of years until everyone looked around and said, wow, like this, you know, maybe we can't get such high rents for our tenants. This doesn't look like a place that we're going to really get a good return on our investment. So all we're trying to do is read the ordinances and local zoning as it is published. If you disagree with certain uses that are not currently listed and therefore allowed in certain zones, those ordinances can be changed. All of this it's a living large document that you can look at, but start with your parcels, see what's available, and then, you know, let's get you in here and get your business going, because that's all we're trying to do.
Yeah. And on the pages now, it's going, the applicant has to certify that they have looked at the ordinance. And if they're missing things, it's just going to go back and say, fill it out, you know. And I think most of the issues that we've had are with multi-tenant buildings. And if somebody doesn't realize they're coming in and the use is slightly different, well, that triggers maybe different parking standards. So we have to look at that as well. So it gets a little more complicated. Or if you have multi-tenant, the signs need to be uniform, not exact, but uniform. So we do, you know, look at a lot of those kind of things. But this process hopefully shall, you know, it's a work in progress, but it should make it easier for the applicants, for us, and, you know, we'll go from there. So we do have this resolution. Then there's one other issue I know Ron wants to talk about and we'll bring up, but I think it's separate and apart from the resolution. So if anybody would like to make a motion to.
Can I comment on this?
Oh, of course.
before motion? So I'm gonna probably catch some people by surprise with this, which I apologize for doing. I don't like this resolution. And the reason that I don't like it is, where it talks about the planning office should be reviewing, the zoning office should be reviewing these things before it comes to us. I don't think we need a resolution to do that.
Well,
Let me finish, and you can disagree. I think, that's my understanding, that's what's done in most towns, that's what's supposed to happen. And for us to put a resolution to affect, a process that should be happening and is not happening, that's a discussion with the town manager to me, and maybe even the town council. We, as the Sparta Planning Board, cannot direct town employees what to do. They don't work for us. This directs them, you will do this. So I understand the thought behind this, and I like what we're trying to do, but to me, this is a resolution that's not needed, and I don't support resolutions just for the sake of a resolution. So I personally would be against this. And then everyone feel free to disagree there. But.
no, I don't disagree. That's what we brought up in the meeting, but,
I mean, I understand the meaning. I never would have, expected this type of wording. And I think this wording is just, we're walking into something that's just the wrong thing. If there's a problem where things aren't being reviewed before they come to us, then let's hit that problem. But let's not write a resolution.
Can I ask, I just want to know from the planner, you said that other towns don't do this. I wasn't at the meeting, Ron, that you're talking about. And I don't disagree with your statement just now, because I just want to get it on the record. Is it true what Ron said, that most towns, there's a certain process? Could you just step us through that process?
So I was a former zoning officer in Westfield, so I can speak to my experience and I am a consulting zoning officer currently in the city of Summit. Neither one had a meeting before going to the planning board. You would have meetings pre-application. But as a zoning officer, I would review the application that came in. And if I denied it, I would say, this is denied. You're going to the zoning board, you're going to the planning board, here's why. And then alternatively, applications that came in for both boards, because like I said, we didn't have a subcommittee of any sort. We had to do a completion checklist. So was it a complete? Is it incomplete? If it's incomplete, you don't go to the board, and you don't go to the board until it's complete. So when I worked at Westfield, I had an assisting zoning officer as well as a board secretary who would help with the completion. At one point, I had neither because of leaving or whatever, and I just did the task at the time because they're all on a timeline, so you have to get them done. So in my experience, I've done kind of just reviewing it and determining if it's a complete application or not.
But Lindsay, if I could just, typically when you were acting as a zoning officer in the zoning office, if an application will come in, you would at least say permitted or not permitted.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, and I would say it's not permitted because of section whatever, and it says this is what is permitted and this is what you're asking
And if
for.
it's not permitted, it wouldn't go the next step.
No, it would be a denied application, and you would either have to then take your denial and apply to the appropriate board, or amend your application to be compliant with the ordinance.
So that's what I'm saying.
Yeah, I
This
know.
is kind of saying, go do that.
Yeah.
And I think that's,
I think-
maybe there's a
I think
we
discussion
just-
with
that's
town
the
manager.
What could it
manager's
be
job.
something as I'm sure in your ordinance, right? You have like I know anytime when in Westfield I took on a new task, they would amend the ordinance that described the zoning officer position, and they would like at one point I took on the Historic Preservation Commission, so they added that description in the ordinance, right? Because you had to be appointed that position when you were, or at least in Westfield when I was hired, I had to go to mayor and council, and they had to approve the hiring. And part of it was approving the description, the job description as well.
We don't have anything like that, do we?
I think we must have job descriptions for,
But an ordinance that describes the zoning officer position?
Yeah, it should say the zoning officer duties or
An
something
ordinance
like
that
that. It would probably be within your town code.
It
Can I
should
let-
be.
hear
Most
from Raisha?
municipalities do have an ordinance stating what the zoning officer job duties are. Most municipalities do have that.
Do you know
So,
what's in yours?
No, I don't. I never looked at it.
Okay.
Zoning officer
So just to
duties.
just to be fair, to hear from you too, right now, like, as in, like last week, maybe not today, with the old applications and stuff, when somebody came in and they handed you an application and they signed it and gave you a check, you didn't look at it for anything like that. It just went straight to, if they gave you a minor site plan application, it just went straight over to the minor site plan subcommittee, right?
For this township,
Yes.
most times that's why when you see some of those applications on the site plan subcommittee minutes, and you say, oh, we didn't get this, yeah, because they submit, and then we review and determine if it stays with just zoning, or if it needs to go to one of the boards.
But it's not looked at in, for detail, for completeness, or for whether it should be at the zoning board, or the planning board, or the minor site plan. If it's a minor site plan application, it just immediately got funneled to the minor site plan subcommittee.
Not always.
Okay. So maybe you're right, Ron. Maybe we should be looking at the ordinance and putting it in there that describes the positions.
and I think, I think the person that has to get involved here, and maybe already, is Jim Zepp.
Yeah. He was at the
Because,
meeting with us.
Yeah, I mean,
As was Anad, Ken Poro,
yeah.
and Dory.
And just in general, we, the planning board, cannot direct town employees what to do.
I hear you.
Thanks, Ron.
Anybody else?
I like that.
Straw poll, what do you want to do? Table it. Consensus? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. All right. Would you be able to draft a letter to the, or, maybe Ken can listen to this, draft a letter to the township manager?
Sure.
Did you find the ordinance?
Appears so. The zoning officer is responsible for reviewing, sorry.
Yeah, but
The
that's
zoning-
just inspection.
The zoning officer is responsible for reviewing applications for zoning permits and the granting or denying of such permits in accordance with the zoning ordinances of the Township of Sparta. So is that what
That's
you're
it.
referring to?
Yeah.
That's,
Maybe we could check other towns and see what they say.
Yeah, I could see what Westfield said.
it's it's 2-24.3. It's under the Division of Zoning Code Enforcement, and it's B.
And we should probably ask for job descriptions too.
So, for example, Westfield has a section that says zoning officer duties, and then it goes through 6 different items. And I can just email this to you as well, Joan.
Thank you.
But it goes through different things: review applications, coordinate processing of development applications, investigate alleged violations, things like that. Enforcement of the ordinance.
Okay. We've got a plan. All right, along those same lines, 2 of the applications probably in the last month or so have come in for Pilates. And Pilates is, depends how you interpret the ordinance, but Pilates is specifically mentioned in the PCED, the PDRM2, the ED, different areas. But it is not listed, it falls under fitness centers because it's led by a class instructor and it's cardio, whatever. So the TCC zone does not list Pilates as a permitted use. So as a minor site plan subcommittee that cannot grant waivers, we were referring it to the full board. There are other places, cardiovascular places, I don't want to say sports centers, but sports-related type of things that are in the TCC zone. I don't think we have an objection to it being there, but it is not listed. So we were kind of split on some of our votes. And I think the best thing to do is maybe talk about an amendment to the ordinance so that it is not questionable if, in fact, people do want to see it in the TCC zone. So we need to kind of discuss that. Ron has some strong points on it. You know, we've tossed it around, but I, you know, want to give him a chance to present his view.
But before that, also, just in general, when an application comes forward, and it is gonna happen all the time, where an applicant says, but they have this, I just want to note that we don't know what they may have done to get that. They may have come before a prior full board and gotten approval.
Or a zoning board.
Or the ordinance might have been different then, or they, you know, all we can do is look today at our current application and read the code and see this is our decision. But going back to this particular use has come up, and it's something that I guess would come up like under an annual review. What are people trying to get that they're being denied? And Pilates seems to be something where, yeah, let's have a discussion. So Ron, sorry.
Right, well, because you have a permitted use, a conditional use, and then if anything is not mentioned, it is presumed prohibited. So that was the premise we were operating under. It was not listed. Fitness centers were not listed. So 3 of us voted to refer it to the zoning board, and 1 voted to refer it to the full planning board because of, I guess, because it's in the master plan, and I'll let you address that part of it.
So I'll give you my view is I do believe it's a permitted use within TCC. And the reason that I say that is that when you look at the ordinance for the TCC, it refers you back to the master plan. Okay, it shall affect the tenets of the master plan. On page 5 of the master plan, under the description of professional, business, commercial, it talks about this category shall include a bunch of categories. One of the categories is health and indoor athletic facilities. Well, that's Pilates to me. So, you know, when I look at, you know, it's not specifically mentioned. I don't see donuts there, but Dunkin' Donuts is there. I think it's umbrellaed within this professional, business, commercial zone as set forth, specifically called out in the TCC master plan. So given that, I think there's another aspect we've got to look at. So we talked about fitness centers and those type of things. So you got to go back to remember, fitness center was something we introduced last year, and we did so as part of a parking ordinance to make it easier for certain types of businesses to get into the economic development zone. I think PDM1 and maybe PDM2, I don't remember. But it wasn't there when they wrote these ordinances, so of course it's not going to be there. But again, I think you got to look at what's the intent as set forth in the master plan, and it's clearly there to me. So, and I think when you think of TCC, you got to look at a couple different things. You can't just look at Sparta Avenue and Main Street. And by the way, in the master plan where it talks about health and athletic, it does talk about Sparta Avenue in particular. But also, you know, there's a history of approvals that goes way back on these types of businesses. And I don't want to call them out because I don't want to call anybody, you know, I don't want to name any businesses, but these types of businesses have been around, have been approved, are still around. And I think we have to recognize it that, yes, it's a permitted use. So the concern is, so, you know, how do we prevent it from becoming a problem? So I think that's where you have to look to the parking standards and each building site. You know, if on a multi-tenant building, if somebody wants to come in, then they got to show that they can satisfy that business within the available parking. So if you're thinking about opening a Pilates studio and a building on Sparta Avenue may have, maybe 10 spaces, that's going to be a hard sell. It's going to be a hard pass. Maybe that's a better way to put it. But that's our job, to look at it and try to say, are they meeting the ordinances? So, I feel strongly it is a permitted use. And I think the trick is to make sure that when we look at, as the applications come in, we make sure we're doing the analysis that says, yeah, and it's not just if is it permitted, it meets all the other things that it needs to meet, such as parking. So that's my feel.
I'd like to see, then, looking back at the definitions, because for me, looking at it, I was on one side of it, but then I saw the other. I didn't know all of this history. So, I consider intensity of use. I want to know what the intent was in drafting certain ordinances. The parking, I'm trying to figure out. So, I would just, for me, it would be helpful if we could clarify our definitions, and then I could make an easier determination.
And that's fair. And along those same lines, I just want to say, this board has approved these types of businesses, not in the TCC, but in the C1 zone. And you won't see fitness center in the C1 zone. So, I think we have to be consistent on what we're doing. And in the C1 zone, we did the right thing. They came to the minor site plan subcommittee. We said, you don't meet the parking. You got to go to the full board. Now, to Joan's point, if clarification is needed, absolutely, let's do it, because that's the right thing. But let's not stop approving things in the meantime, or make it harder.
I just don't think we should be second-guessing the ordinances, because, we may be correct in this one, but something comes up that's not in there for another application where it's not Pilates, and we're saying, well, we think it, might fit, but the way it states it is, if it's not stated, it is presumed prohibited. So let's just fix it, because
We just improved the bagel shop. The bagel shop's not going to be there.
I think to Ron's point, that is that the ordinances is static, but the trends change, and the language in Pilates or yoga, whatever it is, always something new being developed, but with the same intent.
And they're umbrellaed.
So why not fix the ordinance?
The ordinance
I don't
will-
want to be second.
The
I'm
ordinance,
just,
the ordinance will never fix the problem, because the ordinance is static. No matter what you do, the ordinance will always be behind the times.
I'm going to go legal here.
No, I mean, I don't want to speak too much about Sparta ordinances, because I'm
No,
here
just in
today.
general, if
I
something
mean,
is
I
not
agree
in-
with but the definition is important. I was actually just trying to see if I could find it in terms of the fitness center definition, if that's how it's phrased in the ordinance.
Yes, it is.
But I agree, you're not gonna amend ordinances every time somebody comes up with a new exercise class. There'll be, the next thing will be the next thing next week, there'll be something new. And it should all
No,
be
it's
encompassed
fitness
by the-
centers in general.
Right.
So whether it's yoga, Pilates, Zumba, all of them,
Right.
they fall under fitness centers.
Right.
But that ordinance was just introduced, that definition was just introduced last year. So everything that's gone before that, what we'd say is, well, because it doesn't say that, it's not allowed. And I don't think that's the intent of what we're trying to do here. And when you look at that ordinance, I have to pull it up, but I believe it was a parking ordinance, a parking standard ordinance was the title of it. So.
I agree, I agree with what you're saying, and I hear what you're saying down there too, is, you can't, I think, that's one of the things I struggle with a lot of times with our whole master plan and the whole, and all of the documents, is that, we need to have, I think the definitions need to be, sometimes I think they're too specific, to the point of, we'll allow Pilates and Zumba. And then it's like, all right, well, what about yoga? You know what I mean? Instead of saying
Well, how's the batting cage
small,
fit in there?
right,
Something
but
like that.
small, it should be maybe a more general description of, small fitness centers, because a fitness center could be Gold's Gym with, that's 3,000 square feet of gym equipment. with 100 people in there working out. So basically saying that, small fitness centers that have less than, 25 patrons at any one time, that fits in that category, which most of those would, whether it be Zumba or yoga or, Pilates, any of those, but it's not gonna, and like you said, we can't say bagel shops, donut shops. I mean, it's again, small retail food establishments,
Right.
That are takeout only or mostly takeout. I think that's a better way of writing a lot of these things, like we do in some of the industrial zones where we say, light industry with, that cannot have volatile chemicals, explosives, and that, but other than that, we don't care what they do. They can make widgets or they can make laboratory equipment.
I think there's always going to be a certain amount of, we have to use our judgment.
Yeah.
And when we use our judgment, we look to the ordinances and we look to the master plan. And I think in this case, the master plan supports both. The master plan and the ordinance support this type of business in the TCC. And again, when you think TCC, please don't just think of Main Street. Think of the theater center and all those buildings up there. Could be a great use. There's a lot of parking up there. It might fit up there.
The plaza.
But yeah.
So,
That's what,
Just FYI, fitness studio is defined as an indoor fitness business that offers instructor-led fitness or recreation classes, including activities like karate, yoga, and private lessons. So, Pilates, it says like it. Definition specifically excludes tournaments, competitions, or events with spectators. So that would fall under more of a sports center, which we don't even have a definition for. So,
So in my experience, these types of facilities that you're speaking about are typically under personal service or boutique fitness would be the two. That because a boutique fitness center would be the smaller footprint, like a yoga studio, a Pure Barre, Club Pilates, those kinds of, they will identify as boutique fitness because like Ernie said, it's not a crunch, right? Personal service is another one that I've seen used, especially in like downtowns. And then within that definition of personal service, you would put like boutique fitness or that also could fall under also like hair salons or things like that would be a personal service.
And I'm not.
If you wanted more of an-
against improving the language that's there. And I think we have new experiences that we can do that. We've got these other definitions that were, again, just introduced last year. I know they're there, but they were just there as of last year for the very first time. So maybe we want to look at how do we bring that into here? But the point that I'm trying to drive home is I don't think we should be saying it's not an approved business in the interim.
You're saying the intention of the ordinance is to permit.
Yes.
And that
Yeah.
I understand what you're saying as well, because that is also what you have to think about, right? The intention of why was it written this way?
Yes.
And maybe you're thinking the intention was that it was not meant to exclude.
And I look at the master plan. I get the exact words. Under professional businesses / commercials, it talks about uses. It's on page 5. And it says, health and indoor athletic facilities. So, I mean, that's Pilates to me,
And I think,
and similar.
there's the Crunch Gym and the small Pilates studio are both can be permitted uses, but if you're like, well, no, this space is too small
Yes.
and there's not enough parking, so you can't have your Crunch Gym,
Right.
but you can have your
There's,
small
Yes.
Pilates
yeah,
studio.
there's other
So
items
those
that
are
could
both the same
dictate,
thing,
yeah.
They're
Yeah.
still all permitted uses. It's then you
Right.
say, no, you can't do that here because it's too small or
Right.
here because it's too crowded.
It's
So-
not just about permitted
Right.
use, it's permitted use, and you meet all these other.
Right, and then that's when you
requirements.
all say, this is what you can do with this space. You can't have that big, you can't have that much stuff, you can't have that much equipment.
Right, it could be permitted subject to the bulk requirements.
Right.
but even though Pilates is not mentioned, yoga is not mentioned, Zumba is not mentioned, none of them are mentioned in the TCC zone, but they are mentioned in other zones.
Those zones may have been developed afterwards and just never carried over. I mean,
No, I know what you're saying, and I don't disagree
Okay.
with having it in the TCC zone. I just disagree with making those interpretations, and why not just fixing it?
so, is there a third option beyond consulting the master plan and consulting the ordinances, which both are, they're living documents, but they're slow-growing documents? Could we have like a web-based FAQ on planning and zoning that has just general, like, it sounds like there's some established terms that sounded appealing to me, that we could just put in there and kind of give some guidance to the applicant. Because if I'm applying for a business, and I'm going off of what, is being thrown around social media or just, whatever, it would help me to go first step, application, pull the application down. Where's my parcel? Okay, great. There's a little drop down. It says, this zone, and it just gives me just 3 or 4 sentences that tells me, what the TCC zone is meant to be, the fabric of it, whatever. Because that informs the signage, the lighting, the
But
uses.
if you go into the ordinance, there it is, and it says permitted uses.
I know, but
conditional
we
uses.
can't keep updating the ordinances and master
It's
plan.
a
So
nice
I'm
thing
just
to
saying,
do, But how does it help us now?
well, it's something that we could can we potentially roll out something on planning and zoning on the website to go along with, with the application that we're gonna be more frequently updating, right? To make it easier for an applicant to see, like,
Yeah, but I think that's a whole other story than what we're discussing.
well, that's what I'm
now.
saying, it's a third.
But Joan, to your point, and I do agree, the wording that's there now can be approved. Sports centers, which used in many of our ordinances, is not defined. So that leaves it. So I think those things can be fixed. So I think the real question, at least to me, is in the interim, do we say that these types of businesses are not permitted or permitted? I think that's the real question that we're faced with tonight.
Well, but I don't need to get caught up in, personally, I don't want to get caught up in, are they permitted or not permitted? I want to know, can we all agree on what the intent of the zone is? And if we can, then we can just make a reasonable decision based on what we think it should allow. And then we can still, maybe not changing it allows us to more accurately hear an application and say, could you just tweak this and then it'll work in that zone. But then going back to if we're asking the office to do this, then that nuance is even harder. So that's where I'm like, well, if we could write up guidelines, obviously they're gonna be updated in the master plan, but we can't wait that long, because every day we're getting new applications.
I think we have to be realistic, because the ordinance is going to be a static document that's going to be reviewed by planning boards, change every year. Okay? Different people every year. And to Ron's point, I think we just have to be a little more flexible in looking at it at intent. That's it, because no matter what we put in an ordinance now, in 10 years, the new plot is going to be called something else.
It doesn't matter what it's called, it's fitness centers in general.
Yeah, well,
So fitness
That's-
centers in general, if you want it in TCC, put it there.
that's my
Because that's
point
what's
is
gotten
that,
us into trouble with other things at minor site plan, it's
I think,
a bunch of
I
interpretations.
think we delve down and get out of the weeds of the actual ordinance and look at the actual intent. We can come to a clear decision and say, okay, this is what we want here. This is where it should be here.
And I'd be agreeable
I-
to that
I
if you
agree,
came
and
to
I
the
think-
ordinance.
and that was my point before, was that, when we name specific things, it's.
Yeah, no, it says
it-
like
and
that,
then-
like
and then-
this,
then it
like that. We
changes.
can
But
interpret
it's
that.
almost, it's the same thing, but
Right.
slightly different. We're better off basically describing the,
The fabric, right?
in general, the type of business,
That's
But
what comes
but again,
fitness
we still
centers.
have to be specific enough. I mean, we had an issue with this over a animal hospital or a veteran clinic.
Well,
You know what I
that's
mean?
exactly why I'm doing this, because I sat in, as Ron did, and who else sat in? Somebody else did. Dean, for Judge Minkowitz, when he
Yeah.
was talking veterinary hospital, and he was saying, whether it was permitted in the zone or not, and he said specifically, well, is there another zone that specifically mentions hospital? It doesn't have to be veterinary hospital, it has to be hospital. If there's another zone that mentions it, then by virtue of that fact, it was considered, and it should not be in this zone. It should be in that zone. And it's kind of the same argument. So I don't want to go down that slippery road.
But we can also have them in multiple zones.
Yes,
It has to be
yes.
permitted. It has to be the description in there.
Right, so
you
can
know.
we put it in there? That's my question.
And
So it sounds like fitness center could go in the zone
Yeah.
where, okay. So it was incompletely updated to Ron's probable point.
Right,
It should have been, okay.
that's all I want to do. I'm not against it.
Yeah.
I just want to make it so that we're not being arbitrary and capricious as we look at that versus
Yeah.
nothing else.
no, it has to give us enough guidance that we can, we can, without a doubt say that this definitely fits the description of what it is, but without it being so constrained that we're being specific to, to one thing. We get, I mean, you can't say, we'll allow Dunkin' Donuts, but we're not going to allow.
Right.
No, but fitness center says things like, it's instructor-led, like this, like that. It gives you examples, so you can make that interpretation.
Yes.
But the overall category is not in there now.
I'm just, then I go to the other side and I worry that if it's too broad, it helps us on the review, but then, it sounds like the judge is reviewing it in a different way. And that concerns me, because if I had my way about it, I would just understand what we all agree the zone should be, because I think that's what planning board is trying to do right by the community. And I could have my little, cheat sheet on what that zone wants and what it can handle. And then I could look at from planning board, look at what they're trying to get us to be flexible on, accommodate them without ruining that zone, for lack of a better way of saying it. I mean, that's all I'm trying to do. I'm just trying to balance the good and bad and respect the intent. So however we can clarify any of those things, I think will make it easier for all of us and for future.
5-minute break. Let's think about it. Okay, we on? All right. So where are we?
I would like to, I don't know if it's a motion or what the right aspect is, just to say that from the board, we endorse, if that's the right word, th- these types of businesses to include similar to what's in the fitness studios with Pilates, yoga, that kind of stuff, in the TCC, providing they meet the other standards such as parking. I don't know if that's the right way to proceed. That's what I would recommend. And it's an interpretation.
Lindsay
Does
was
it have to
about to
go-
say something,
Oh, I'm
so.
sorry.
No, I mean, I don't know that you need to make a blanket decision like that. I think if, so change the, or you could, you could change the ordinance and include fitness studio or whatever else. I think otherwise, or at least for today, there's no application in front of you, correct? I assume it's
Correct.
had to do something with something else.
Well, I think there may be one still. There might be one.
No, we already gave a decision.
There was one that was a problem with the vote, though, I thought. Did we ever rectify that?
Both of them
Ivy?
both of them, it should be in the
It says
packet.
on there that both of them went to zoning.
Yeah. It's in the packet. That's what they were told.
So I would say at this point, the next time, in the meantime, if you want to amend the ordinance, that's a great idea. That makes it easier and more clear, and we were just saying undefined
then
terms are.
That has to then go to council, right, for them to approve it.
But in the meantime, I don't think you need to put something specific on the record, because this way you can consider each application, and then when one comes forward the next time, you can make the argument that you just made, that this is covered and it should be, and they meet the other requirements of the zone, and therefore
So
you can.
if the two businesses that we made a decision on were to come back with a new application tomorrow, could we then reconsider?
If, how about amending your motion to say, that we believe that due to the master plan wording, that fitness centers are allowed in TCC, and hence we are recommending a change to the ordinance. And we put that on the record, then that's our opinion that we're going to do this along with a change.
So I'm going to push it a little bit further, I think, because I think we're close.
Okay, we're going to get there.
I'm okay with the change, but in the meantime, I think it's our interpretation that it is permitted, and we will pursue a change that will make the clarification so it's no longer
Correct.
difficult.
That's what I'm looking for.
Okay.
Rewrite the
Let's take a straw poll then on, 53 application. Well, so we don't lose.
Yeah, go ahead.
I'd like to make a motion that any application for a Pilates studio in the TCC zone be an approved use.
Applies to, or similar?
Similar.
A second?
Fitness
I have
studios,
to
not
just say
Pilates.
something here. I think that, I liked the idea of introducing language such as small or boutique. I think that fits the town center. I mean, we wouldn't, and I think that will answer a lot of questions to the applicants if that is in decision-making process for the ordinance.
I think it makes it more narrow.
I mean, a Pilates, yeah, narrows it just enough to fit into the town center, in my mind.
But then you need to then you need to take boutique and then define that. And then, but then when you define that, you're gonna end up saying it has to be this big or it has to have these requirements, but you already have requirements for your town
Yes.
center zone, so you don't wanna layer upon layer requirements, because any facility, any business owner who comes to you has to fit within those requirements already.
That's true,
So-
that's
and then if
true,
you
but
put
it,
boutique, then you're just adding more terms, which I think is what we're trying to, to define.
So a you're
Fitness
saying it's
center.
a fitness center.
Fitness center, it
Fit-
encompasses
Which is
it all,
already
and we have-
defined.
No,
and we have that
Is a
definition.
if it's a fitness center, a Pilates studio, or is it an LA Fitness? right?
Is it a stack?
Is it,
you're-
is
Is it a
it
stack?
five-
It's a
2,000 feet or
It's a
50,000?
studio.
Then you get the parking.
Yeah, but that's, right, but like, that was like when we first started, you know, someone can come in and say, we want to put this huge gym, this Jersey Strong gym in your TCC, and you say, no, that doesn't fit. There's no room, there's no parking, there's no space. And so that's okay. That's the second layer, you know, it's okay. It's a, you know, you allow fitness center studios, however, or sports centers, however you want to define it. And then you all make the decision on the rest of the parameters underneath, you know,
Right,
the requirements for the
I can give you an
TCC.
example of, not gonna happen, but say CVS says, you know what, we're out of here, we're moving. That space is vacant. Would that be something that could hold a big gym? Probably. And it has the parking. So, you know, it's all dictated by the parking.
Yep.
You know, you know, and the size of the facility. You know, most of these there's very few large places in the TCC zone. All of them are small, you know. They're, you know, 3 to 6,000 square foot spaces, which are dictating those small uses. So, you know, the only other place I remember there was a gym in where the old post office was.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, they did put a gym in there and they had the parking for it, you know, so, but I think it's dictated by that. So I think saying fitness center, and then we have to make the decision based on the parking standards.
Are we getting rid of Sports Center?
Hmm?
Are we getting rid of Sports Center and just saying Fitness Center replaces it?
No. We're going to have to define sports center at some time. But fitness center says it
We-
specifically excludes tournaments,
Okay, all right,
stadiums,
all right.
you know, those kind of things, competitions.
Right.
But fitness center is just instructor-led classes and exercise that it can encompass yoga, Zumba, Pilates, whatever new
The
name you
scale
come
is
up with.
determined by zone and availability,
Yeah.
parking.
Could even be a gym that has weights
Yeah.
that they bring in
Personal
two
train-
person
yeah,
at a
I mean,
time and
that's
personal
all
trainer.
over town centers,
Yep.
you know,
Yeah.
absolutely.
You know,
They're
it could
so
be any of
popular.
those things. We're just talking about something that is low volume.
Right,
you
fitness
know,
center
that's-
is, I think the definition of
Yeah,
that is fine.
I think so. No,
Well, I think we're
I'll
gonna
let
have,
him-
I think we're gonna have
I'll make
traffic here if you don't put in smaller boutique or something. I think that we're adding more work. We're adding more work to the planning board by not trying to define just a little bit more, you know, what we want to see in the TCC zone. But
The master plan can do all that. Right now, we're just trying to close this loophole for the time being.
yeah,
So I'd
Okay.
make a motion that we
Well,
ask the,
before, I just want to
He's
add.
making a motion.
I know, but just to that point, because we have added uses and talked about uses without defining the scope and scale of the uses. In this one, we're determining that parking has limited it effectively. But I do want to, you know, hear that point that if it were some other uses, it won't necessarily be limited by parking, and we can't limit by off-site traffic generated. So just, we're talking about intensity of use and all that. So, all right, go make your motion, sorry.
let's make a motion that we ask to have fitness studios, was it? There's fitness centers added to the TCC zone.
And in the meantime, we support hearing I shouldn't amend your motion.
No,
but-
that's all right. In the meantime, we support applications that are to that end.
Mhm. Okay, I'll second that.
Okay, any other discussion? Raisha, roll call.
Sure. Robert Bleakley,
Yes.
Ron Day,
Yes.
Arnie Ragstat,
Yes.
Councilman Mark Scott,
Yes.
Brian Zimmerman,
Yes.
Christine Dunbar,
Yes.
Vice Chairman Robert Otto,
Yes.
Chairwoman Joan Furman.
Yes.
All right.
Now, what's the process? Do we write a letter to town council asking for that one thing to be incorporated?
think-
We're gonna,
I think we have to rewrite the ordinance with that wording in it
Just-
and then send.
Okay.
I'm gonna talk to Ken in the morning.
Yeah. I think that's what
And then
we
he'll
have
report
to do.
back.
Pretty sure because that's how, when we amended the last ordinance, that's what we did. We submitted
Yeah.
the sample amended ordinance.
Lindsay, no, Catherine needs to do that type of stuff for us. Is that a legal thing or is that a planner or what's the best way to maybe you guys, you can all talk and figure out what the best answer is for us.
Yeah, I'm not sure how you guys, in other municipalities, like where I'm the borough planner, I will write the ordinance and then send it to the
The attorney,
attorney
yeah.
for the municipality, and then they'll bring it to mayor and council, who will then refer it to planning board for consistency, which clearly it's consistent with. And then it'll go back for
It's a long-
the
it's a long
two readings
process.
for adoption. Yeah, so it's probably a couple
Months.
months away, yeah.
It's gonna take
That's,
Okay, thank you.
Just for the one.
It'll be
where, though,
adopted probably
they can
around
you can
September.
bring it up at, well, the 10-day notice and all of that, so.
Yeah, notices.
But in the meantime, we
and-
can
Yeah.
do something, so we have a nice compromise.
Then Mark, you can explain the reason behind it.
Good compromise.
Good. All right, one other thing with regard to minor site plan subcommittee, and then we'll move on. I'm sorry. I'm glad we didn't have any applications today, really, besides the one. Economic development. The minor site plan subcommittee is now going to review applications in the economic development zone as long as they don't have anything to do with hazardous chemicals.
Or also controlled, I think. There was another, let me just check.
Yeah, any controlled substance, whatever it is, but
Hazardous materials or other materials regulated under the ED zone. Okay.
yeah. So if they're coming in just for a change in tenancy or anything else that does not involve chemicals or other substances, as you said, and it's just the minor site plan, the minor site plan subcommittee can review them, as was determined by Mr. Dash and Mr. Porro today.
I'd like to see a list of these controlled substances.
It's long. Let me just read. The minor site plan subcommittee shall also have the authority to act upon minor site plans provided they do not involve an application in the ED zone or change in use in the ED zone for a use that will utilize hazardous materials or other materials regulated under the ED zone. The minor site plan subcommittee shall not have authority to review or act upon applications for minor site plans that include any variances. And I can get your question, hold on. So it's you gotta look on nj.gov, but I'm not gonna read it all. It's 87 pages long. But
Minor site plan, so we have to interpret that.
You better get started.
But it is NJAC 7, 1E Appendix A, including petroleum products that are regulated but do not appear in Appendix A, shall be expressly prohibited. So basically, you can't do gasoline service, automotive repair, garages, and car washes. And then, in addition, you cannot have a use that directly or indirectly utilizes materials listed in the 87-page appendices. Okay?
So I'm gonna just give a concern I have with that, just to
Yeah.
get it out there. So
Just FYI, before you do, there's no change in the wording of the ordinance, it's the interpretation
yeah,
of it. So,
I agree.
yeah.
So, a lot of this goes back to when the ordinance 2221 was written, which basically downsized the size of a building you could have. And because part of that ordinance included certain impact statements, traffic, economic, and then environmental, required, they're always required. And so the thought process there was, by keeping it with the planning board versus the minor site plan subcommittee, making all those go there, you had the opportunity to really say, is this business what they say they are? You're not going to have that with the minor site plan subcommittee. So, so if we're going to make that, if that interpretation, I just want to caution people to make sure that you're thinking along those lines. Is that really what you want to do? And I'll leave it there.
How do we change it?
Hmm?
How do we change it?
Leave it the way it is. Use the old interpretation. This is, do you want to open the door to what was, maybe it wasn't the best wording, what is, let's make sure you are what you say you are before, we approve your tenancy.
And we're going to be looking at 87 pages of different chemicals and stuff. It's a,
And again, a lot of these, they make, you could have a warehouse or distribution center, you're not supposed to have distribution center, but they think a warehouse or distribution, that don't use those kind of things. So the doors, we're opening a door that I just want to be, I think we got to be mindful for the possibility. Is it worth it?
Ron, do you feel like it's gonna be much easier for something like that to slip through the cracks when you're in your site plan
Yes,
committee
yeah.
than coming from the
that's
planning board
why.
in the ED zone?
Yeah. And we have, and when you come to the board, it's not just the board, it's the board and all the professionals. The
Right.
public has a chance to talk.
right.
And we're foregoing that now.
Yeah.
So. Dave, I'm gonna look to you because you were part of those discussions, I think, when we did the old ordinance on 22, 21, back in the day, when Drew was the chair. Do you remember any of these discussions, or I know you didn't make all the meetings, but any
No, I
thoughts?
think one of the other things when you talk about the hazardous materials and you look at the area with the ED zone, I think about the area out by Germany Flats, in that area. And one of the biggest things with the hazardous materials is the wellhead protection area.
Yeah.
For the
Yes.
water supply for the township. And if you'll recall, I'm pretty sure there's some maps around that shows the tier 1, tier 2, tier 3, the further away you get from the wells themselves. And while they wanted, as I recall, to promote some reasonable economic development in that area, by the same token, it's the township's water supply. And in the last few decades, as opposed to all the wells that were originally around Lake Mohawk as part of the Lake Mohawk Sparta Mountain Water Company, there's a greater dependency on Germany Flats now than there ever was. So it's one of those situations where in my mind, you'll recall no floor drains, no hazardous materials. You've had a couple applications off the top of my head, I want to say over by Aaron Way, for somebody that wanted to do a lot of painting, that type of thing. If I recall correctly, the board did not approve that because of partly, I assume, because of the hazardous materials. So you're in a situation where I think that's one of the main things you have to be careful of, because once you get pollution in something like that, just like they talked about tonight, leaving room in the sewage treatment plant for additional treatment later on, you got to provide additional treatment, God forbid, if something gets in the water system. So I think that's one of the paramount things about it right there.
And it's not that we don't want to allow these businesses,
No,
I think
understood.
you look at the last thing, we're trying to make it easier in this case, but this is one of those cases I think we just want to be very careful and make sure we're letting in the types of businesses that are meant to be there.
Yes.
Is it,
That's correct. And I think that this is going to need a little bit more deeper look than just making a motion tonight.
Yes.
I mean, you must.
Well, we don't even get to really make a motion
Right,
on this.
Okay. Or no action tonight is what I'm saying. I mean, you've got hazardous materials in that zone, right? You've got red label chemicals on trucks and on trains.
Yeah.
And I don't know the exact how that happened, except that there was some way that they said, well, we're not actually using them, we're just moving them. Okay? And that's how they got away with it. And to Dave's point, there have been derailments right there. And one day, if one of those cars breaks apart and goes into that aquifer, we're 45 to 70% of our water comes out of there, depending on the season.
Become real good friends with you.
So I think we really got to think about this, right?
Part of it's protecting the citizens of Sparta as well.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, the hard part is the railroad, we have no control over. That's federally controlled and, you know, what comes through, and, you know, I mean, the one positive thing is most of those trains are headed for the city and they have restrictions on the tunnel and everything else, so, you know, so we don't have the same as some of those train accidents they've had in the Midwest where they got 100 cars of, you know, bad stuff on them. This has, occasionally there's one. It's probably getting dropped off somewhere between here and New York. You know, but we could do our part with the businesses.
I think our caveat is we've always been told that if we are not comfortable in reviewing the application, we can refer it to the full planning board. And so I guess that's just what we continue to do.
So Ron, the ordinance is 22-21, I think.
2221.
So that was adopted December 13th, and that has to do with amending the definitions for the economic development district and portions for PDRM.
They excluded distribution centers, hubs.
Okay.
They excluded fulfillment centers, and we said the biggest building you can have is 175,000 square feet.
Okay.
And then, you know, did a bunch of other stuff along those lines. It incorporated, the other big thing is, it incorporated requirements for these impact statements, which give us the information we need to determine, is it the right business? Are you what you say you are?
The
Or do
use.
we see it the same way?
Okay.
I don't think anyone comes intentionally to mislead us. We may have a different view.
What's the downside with the business community?
The downside is that they don't feel that they can avail themselves of the minor site plan subcommittee pathway for what could be relatively minor applications. So to Ron's point, which is kind of always the point, is we want to encourage business that's a general beneficial use in the zone and it's intentional and that the community is protected, but it sounds like he helped put together this ordinance because unfortunately we're getting applications sliding in that even though we're doing everything we can, our citizens are being put at risk. So how do we, I mean, I think you already hit it, is if there's a whisper of we're uncomfortable with this, then it gets referred to the full planning board. I'm fine with that.
Then we're uncomfortable with all of them.
Well,
How are we gonna make
Like,
that
there may be
determination?
some things in ED zone,
Yeah.
like for instance, I believe there's a couple of health facilities down there, that maybe makes sense for.
Right, I had said, that I didn't object to it as long as it's not a warehouse.
so
Yeah, I mean, that's,
that could be a personal thing, or we could kind of just look at it again with, I think I would feel better looking at 22-21 and really reading through that along with this ED zone description, because I don't think it's a reinterpretation. I read it and it does seem like if these things aren't involved, then MSPS can review it, but I don't disagree that, I mean, it's 87 pages long, so we would need to just really tread carefully. And then to other things, we're here now, we want to do the right thing. I'm not saying the other boards in future wouldn't, but we need to somehow figure out how to really protect, well, again, like the wellhead protection zone, exactly that. You know, I think we're all, any population that's not concerned about their water supply, their clean air, is a population that doesn't have their priorities straight. So we just are going to figure out how to lean on our local codes to protect the natural resources, right? So,
Yeah, and if I can just say, to me, it all goes back to over there in the ED zone, we still have lots, right? We still have lots. How are we going to see them developed? Because every time you allow one of those lots to be developed and you put down this hard surface, right? You are not allowing you're not allowing infiltration, you're not allowing purification of the water, and you're harming, in a sense, our water supply. So when I see these companies come in and they want to, sure, I want them to have a business there, and we're fighting to get a few trees in here or there. The trees also remove pollutants also, and they purify. And then I'm going back to that whole area on Aaron Way that used to be a gravel and sand company, right? And for years, they have scraped off. How many layers, how many feet have been scraped off that we're supposed to be cleaning our water? So now we're even closer to our aquifer and need even more protection. Okay, so that's why it adds up, 40%, okay, but when they're asking for 50, I say no. You cut down on your office space. I mean, we're being generous, and allowing the 40%. But we all have to be firm on that and understand that the cumulative effect is something that's very hard to measure from each one of these businesses.
Each application stands on its own. We gotta look at it and make sure, there may be cases where variances are good and cases where they just don't make sense, but we gotta look at each one on its own merits, I think.
I'm not talking about hardship cases or things,
I'm not either.
or things like that. I'm talking about protecting our water supply.
I totally.
And taking it seriously,
Totally.
which hasn't been
Which I
done
think we do.
from my perspective for the past few years. It just hasn't been done.
That's a view, and I'll respect your view. Yeah, I think people doing everything that we can. When this board reviews applications, we talk about that stuff.
We do.
So I don't want to say it's not being done. I don't want that perception out there.
No,
I think-
and often, everybody here has had input into their concerns about, the native landscaping and such. We always bring that up with our applicants.
Exactly.
Yeah,
I
and they're
agree with you.
expecting it too, and they're ready for it.
I agree.
Which is good.
Exactly.
It's fair.
It's part of the discussion.
Yeah.
so it sounds like we're here, we're the ones who decide, and we're all in agreement. So it's not like we need to really draft anything right now.
Nothing I could think of. I
Yeah.
think it sounds like that there's been a revised interpretation that's being flown down to us. It sounds like, if I understand it right. So the question is, if that's what we're being told, my concern was just, I wanted to caution people that please think it out, make sure that they understand the concerns that I had.
I'd like to see that ordinance changed as well. There are a couple things in there that need some updating, but that's for another day. All right.
Well, it doesn't have to happen today, but maybe we want to put
Yeah,
that
I
on
know.
our agenda.
Yeah, I'm going to write something up myself and I'll show you. You can put that on. Okay. Even with this one thing about the fitness center, isn't there a way to just get it to you faster?
To the town council?
Yeah.
Oh, honestly, I don't
You
know.
want to bring it up
I,
at the next meeting?
sure.
Might help. All right, thank you. This has been great discussion, I think, on a lot of different issues that have been plaguing us for a while. So I think it's been very helpful. We have just a few more things to do. All right, let's do the updates. Mark?
Sure. The last town council meeting, we had the discussion. It was pretty much wholly about cannabis, and the town council approved the retail sale of cannabis Class 5 in Sparta within 250 feet of a school, playground, nursery school, church, and
Door to door.
Door to door.
and the change is also door to door. No longer is it from the property line to, for example, if you were playing, if the PNC Bank building across from Mohawk Avenue were to become, it one day could become a dispensary because it's more than 250 feet away from the front door of Mohawk Avenue School. So you could have the dispensary on one side and you'd have people from all over coming into town and buying cannabis, while you have 6-year-olds playing softball 30 feet, 40 feet across the street. So anyways, there is a movement afoot to see if there's a way in which we can overturn that, and we'll see how that goes. There's been an incredible reaction by the township to this major change, and we'll see what happens there. Otherwise, the other thing that's happened is as soon as the cannabis was passed, Mr. Chiarello resigned from the board, and we are now working on putting a replacement person in, and that person, we are taking applications for replacement, and that person would take office immediately and serve until the November election, and then there would be a new election for the remainder of Mr. Chiarello's term, which is 1 year, and then that person, upon winning the election, would take office immediately. Would not wait till January 7th or whatever the reorganization meeting is. So that's just a tip of the iceberg about what's going on with the town council. Thank you.
How do you follow up?
Oh, the trifecta.
Okay.
Oh, okay, so I,
Environmental.
Hard one to follow up.
yeah, I know, right? Well, I'm going to try here. We had an Earth Day fair, and there was, it's a shame that it wasn't better attended. We had a lot of great activities for kids, and it was put together so thoughtfully by Christine Rogers and Kara Johnson, and the weather cooperated, but I think it was a little late. It was May 3rd for people to come, and I think it's a little on the outskirts. There was, some discussion about how we could not, or possibly do it again, but maybe try the municipal building, one more time. But yeah, I think it could be successful, and I hope that we don't give up on it yet. This is our second endeavor. It has a lot to offer our kids and our community, bringing us together for the environment. That's our thoughts. in terms of other things that we're working on, you know, I won't speak to the lighting, that we're hoping to be implemented, you know, the 3,000 degree Kelvin, the downward facing lighting perhaps, and the hours, you know, being limited. You know, we're hoping that we can gradually through time, you know, see that implemented. And I know that Rob is working hard on that. We've also been working on a trifecta of things that have been recommended by ANJEC, which is the Association of New Jersey Environmental Commissions. And we do pay, Sparta pays for us to be a member of that. And they're a very great resource for us in terms of guidance and sustainability for us and actions going forward. So we've been looking at a Packaging Product Stewardship Act, and that is Assembly number 5009, and it's actually coming up for a vote tomorrow. And what it does is it reduces excessive packaging waste. It bans toxic materials like PFAS, lead, and vinyl chloride, and it saves taxpayer dollars and supports municipal recycling programs. So you might want to take a look at that and give our District 24 Assemblyman a call tomorrow if you're interested in seeing that passed. So that's one thing we've been, you know, discussing, or will be discussing a little bit more tomorrow night. Then we have another item. It's called the New Jersey Climate Superfund Act Municipal Resolution. And what this does is, I don't know whether you've ever heard of Pay Up Climate Polluters. That was an organization that was promoting responsible action by the large fossil fuel industry that was located in New Jersey. And there's a lot of background on that because of the release of a study in the 1970s in which it was predicted that we would see the rise of temperatures in our oceans and in our air and everything, and to hold those polluters responsible. And Exxon had this study, and they said this is what will happen, and then they chose to ignore that and go on polluting, okay? But anyway, so that's some background history. So this new resolution that's pending before the New Jersey legislature would impose liability on large fossil fuel companies for certain climate change-related damages they caused, instead of imposing all those costs on us, the New Jersey taxpayers. And so that's in the Senate. It's the Senate Assembly bill, and so we're looking at that, we're discussing that, and maybe we'll be passing that on to the town council for their endorsement, along with the Packaging Product Stewardship Act. So I said there was a trifecta. So there's another one we haven't looked at yet that ANJEC has set out to us to examine. And that is something that this community has talked about for a long time, and that is getting some sort of Food Waste Reduction Act program going for our community. And that is called the Food Waste Reduction Act. So we'll be looking at that also, I think, in the near future. So I think it sums up most of what
Can you
going on.
send to everybody on the planning board the email address of that, I think you said it was an assemblyman that we should contact?
Yeah, I can actually Yeah, it's, if you just call District 24, which is over in the EDZ zone,
Okay.
and just, what is his name? It used to be Parker Space, but it's Ingamart? Is anybody familiar with our assemblyman? But he will be, the bill is actually going to be introduced to him. He's probably not that familiar with it. In Ganamort. In Ganamort? In Ganamort, yeah.
Right.
You want the telephone number?
No, I have it. Thank you.
Okay.
Thanks.
Thanks, Christine.
Thank you.
Yeah. So these are the things we do, and, you know, it's a slow process, and we're very careful. And we really appreciate the support of ANJEC in doing this, and a lot of these things lead into our sustainable New Jersey actions that we select.
Okay, great. Rob, minor site plan subcommittee, as if we hadn't had enough.
So, we were contemplating sports centers versus fitness. So you can look at the previous hour of discussion, but that was one that we decided on to refer it. We had 223 Sparta Avenue, which was repaving approved. I don't know if Ron wants to weigh in at all on that, or just on 223 Sparta Avenue, the repaving.
No.
Okay. And then we had 156 Woodport, which was a fence installation, bollard repainting, I think, requests. That was pretty straightforward. And then we had new signage just approved for PNC Bank 40 Woodport. And we had a tough one, multi-tenant at 25 Center Street, which we were able to finally approve based on finding a pre-existing variance, again, in the spatial data logic portal. So that's kind of what we got into. Again, you can rewind to an hour and a half ago or something where we talked about the difficulties in moving forward on these applications. Since again, minor site plan we don't have a quorum, so we can only kind of help the applicant, but we can't grant variances. So that's it for me.
It's just a really quick update with the master plan subcommittee. Since we were here last time, we have not met. And last time we did the survey, which is online. If anybody hasn't seen it yet, well, we've all seen it, but if you know anybody who wants to see it, it is online on the township website now. And thanks to Lindsay, who did a terrific job putting it all together. We are meeting tomorrow, so our goal tomorrow is to really just finalize how we're going to proceed with the focus groups, sending out letters and who's going to oversee which groups, and coming up with questions and getting some dates, and that'll be what we'll be doing for the next couple of months, take us through the summer. I'll fill you in more after we meet tomorrow. So then we have one more thing on the agenda, and that is Resolution 25-13, Planning Board, Application 24-727, The Green, 973. I apologize, that just got to you today, but you had seen this before. We had it, and it went back for a change, and the change is on the last page, where the number 5, where the applicant agrees to impose a 15-minute customer usage window time restraint between its league and the group party play. So it was to alleviate the parking lot congestion. And there was one other thing that was put in here about, on page 5, number 3, as per the Sparta Fire Prevention Memo of 12/30/24, applicant may be subject to additional fire subcode improvements. So those were the two things that changed from the last time. I don't know if you've had a chance to look at it, if you want to maybe give it a conditional approval, if you're not comfortable giving it a full approval. Leave it up to you to make a motion, what you want to do.
This applicant is a solid citizen. I don't have any reason to think that anything in here wouldn't be positive for the town. And the corrections, I'm sure will be taken care of. So I
No,
make
no,
it-
no, no. We had this prior, we all looked at this.
Yes,
And we said, oh, you're missing the 15-minute interval.
right, we did.
So it came back with the 15-minute interval and the additional fire department thing. So this is something you have seen before.
Right.
So I don't feel that uncomfortable giving it to you like at the last minute because
No, I
you've seen
understand.
it. Okay.
So, and I don't think we need a conditional approval, right?
Well, we're going to make a motion, right? But where was the 15-minute approval?
It's on the last page, number
Number 5.
5.
Okay. I'm okay with making a motion to approve it as updated.
I'll second the motion.
Okay, roll call, please. Or any discussion?
I had to recuse from this.
Same with me.
You did as well, yes. Okay.
And Brian, you too, Brian?
No.
Robert Bleakley,
Yes.
Councilman Mark Scott,
Yes.
Brian Zimmerman,
Yes.
Christine Dunbar,
I don't remember hearing this
The
applicant.
golf simulator?
No,
Maybe she wasn't here?
I don't think I
Oh.
was here to.
Oh, you missed a couple
Do we have
meetings.
enough?
Yeah.
Do we have
Okay.
enough to?
Vice Chairman Robert Otto,
Yes.
Chairwoman Joan Furman.
Yes. Okay. The other application is going to be held to the 21st. It wasn't quite ready. That's Resolution 25-14, PB number 25-729 Paracella. It was for the subdivision. So we will review that. That'll be carried until the May 21st meeting. Okay. Open to the public. All right, would anybody like to make a motion to adjourn? if
I'll
you
make
don't
that
have anything
motion.
else?
Rob beat me to it.
Thank
I'll
you.
second it.
Thank you. All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Meeting adjourned.